All right, guys, I thought we'd take a look at the internet weather for this week. Nothing overly surprising, nothing new that we haven't seen before, but this one is the most probe ports. So this is where we have the most scanning just by sheer volume, not necessarily how many scan sources are involved, but just sheer raw scan probe activity. Unsurprisingly, Telnet, SSH up at the top, which we've seen for a long time now. A lot of the IoT devices with default passwords, you see a lot of scanning on those ports with brute force password guessing, trying to get into them and stuff like that. 445 TCP, we actually will take a closer look at that one in a minute. Microsoft SQL Server, 1433. 81 TCP is probably the go-ahead web server. 3389 TCP is remote desktop protocol. We talk about that a lot also. HTTPS and web, they always kind of show up on the list because there's things scanning for that along the way. And then at the bottom of the pile here is the 5555 TCP, which has been known as part of the Android debugger, people leaving that open. But there's a little twist that I kind of discovered this week, so we'll take a closer look at that one as well. This is the most sources probing. This is typically where we see most of the botnet related stuff, because you get a whole bunch of sources simultaneously scanning for a particular port. And that usually indicates some kind of malware directing them to do so. So we already talked about the 445 TCP. We're going to take a closer look at that. I'm going to skip Telnet this week. There's not any real big change here. 8080 TCP we'll take a closer look at as well. And we'll take a look at the 5555 TCP. Go-ahead web servers down here as well. And there's a bunch of other noise ones, like all these ICMP ones are usually backscatter or other noise related to scanning activities. So probably not really super relevant to the discussion. So let's take a quick look at 445 TCP. This is a 2-year shot look at it. And you'll notice that things were pretty level for a while here through late 2016 into early 2017. And in May of 2017, that's when WannaCry came out, which was a pretty famous ransomware that we all heard about. So it's a little about a year and a half ago now. And you can see there's a big spike, and then it just started to really climb here. This dip here really wasn't here. If I remember right, we actually had a kind of weird data issue in our data collection that accounts for this, so ignore that. But I wanted to point it out so people don't think that there was actually something happened to diminish the botnet. It actually was on our side. We had a little collection issue.
Yeah, like it was steadily going up the whole
time. Oh, yeah. And it did actually continue to climb up. But since this point, it's kind of leveled off for the most part. I would say for most of 2018, it's a pretty relatively straightish line. No big swings up or down for the most part. And this activity continues. Most of it is, either latent WannaCry infections that are still out there, just people haven't taken care of them, or other families of malware that also exploit that MS17010 vulnerability, which is in the SMB protocol. This is a Microsoft directory service, which is for file sharing. That's what that port is. So this is port 8080 TCP. And this one's related to that GPON router vulnerability. So that's another type of router that's out there. And we had some types of scanning back here, but they're very sporadic. And then you can see there's a really sharp change in the scanning pattern somewhere around, it was early May or something like that, it looks like. And that's when the GPON router remote code execution vulnerability came out. So a lot like some of the stories we were talking about with struts and some of these other things, these devices, you can send a post request to them with some parameters in there that tell it to go execute something. So it's got like a little exploit, and it's very shell shocky if anybody remembers shell shock, the shell shock vulnerability. I wasn't able to grab an example of this, but I'll show you another one in the next one that we grabbed in our honeypot that's very similar as well. So port 5555 TCP, which is the Android debug bridge, there was a vulnerability that came out back here like the January, February timeframe, and it kind of stayed very level. And then a bunch of other actors like Satori, the Satori malware family, they got involved and said, I want to scan for this too and recruit some devices in. But when I've been looking at what's actually coming into our honeypots lately it is not the Android exploit that I'm seeing. It's actually a TR69 exploit. And TR69 it's a management protocol for like routers and stuff that an ISP might use. So like your internet service provider would use TR69 to administer or configure the router if it's like some CPE type equipment, you know what I mean? Customer provided.
This is remote, like from their office to the consumer at home, you mean?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. So like, some providers, some internet service providers for home, they'll usually provide you with a piece of hardware. So that might be a DSL modem or a cable modem or something like that. And a lot of those have TR69 enabled, and then the ISP has means to go manage that device using that protocol. Most of them listen on port 7547, but there are some devices that instead of listening on 7547, they listen on 5555. So there's some overlap there.
Oh, I see.
So the Android is using that for their debug port, but there's some devices that use that for their TR69 port. So, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So here's an example. It's a little hard to read, but this is the request that comes in to our honeypot. And I obfuscated the host here, but it is on port 5555, which I highlighted in yellow. And you'll see they're passing in a SOAP request here. And in this SOAP request, they're trying to set the NTP servers on the device, which is a typical kind of thing that you would do with TR69. You might set like the NTP servers or DNS servers or things like that to whatever your ISP has available to your customers. And in here, what they're passing is, for the NTP server 1 field, they're putting a backtick and then some instructions that say cd to /temp, run wget, fetch this file from this IP address, and then run this file with a backtick. And if you're familiar with Linux, a backtick means execute this. So there's a bug in whatever device this is they're targeting, which I'm not sure which one it is, that I guess when it processes this field, it will actually execute it when it really shouldn't. They're not doing good input sanitization, is the basic gist. So I took a look at this, I grabbed it to see what it is, and it actually came back, only 3 vendors, AV vendors, very new, fresh malware. Only 3 AV vendors recognized it, and they all recognized it as Mirai. I'm gonna guess it's probably Hajime, just because I know that there's some Hajime overlap with Mirai, and I feel like it might be that. Either way, they're all kind of like very closely knit families anyway, because they're just kind of variants of each other.
Yeah.
And anyway, I thought it'd be interesting to show an actual example of like this scanning activity that we're showing in these charts. In our honeypots, we're seeing this is what they're trying to actually do and what delivered to the victim machines.
Because this seems more likely than someone leaving their Android debugging device open in the internet. Like this actually is out in the internet.
Right. There's not that many, I don't think, from like when you look at Shodan, it does not look like there's a lot of Android debugger services listening on port 5555 TCP worldwide on the internet. Seems like it's very low percentage.
You'd have to enable it.
Right.
Or the manufacturer would have to mistakenly have it enabled on
left
chip,
it open for some reason, which would be...
It's happened, but it's rare.
Right, I think that would be rare.
Whereas this
is probably more likely that there's some device out there, I'm not sure which one, that has this vulnerability, and they're seeing if they could find any of them. Which is, we know that there are at least a handful of devices out there that have very similar vulnerabilities like this. And that's all I really had for this week on the Internet Weather.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.